Hello everyone, Season 4 is finally upon us, so it is time to provide some updates to our basics guides. The next several videos you see on the channel are going to address the changes to the characters that we have already done basics guides for. Particularly for beginners, we want to make sure that you have all the info you need to play the character properly. With that, we will begin with Josie. First up, I'm going to address the really simple changes. 3-3, down forward 3+4, crouch dash 1+2, and her super all received an additional active frame on their hitbox. This likely won't have a huge impact, but this change should allow these moves to hit more consistently and perhaps more often. Down forward 3+4, crouch dash 2, and crouch dash 1+2 also got bigger hitboxes in general, so you should see these whiff less often. Next, let's take a look at some other minor changes, but stuff that could become important depending on the matchup. 3 forward 3 is now -13 instead of -14, so just a tad safer. Only a few characters can launch at 13 frames as opposed to 14. Down back 4-2-4 is now -14 instead of -16, so again, less characters will launch you for this if you take the risk to finish it, although this is something you should still be confirming, not just randomly finishing. Forward 2-3-3 does 2 points less damage now, so a very minor nerf to her juggles. The last hit of down forward 1-4-2 now gives a big counter hit stun juggle if it hits by itself. This is going to be useful only on rare occasions because the purpose of this string isn't to whiff either of the first 2 hits, but at least you'll now get rewarded big if you do and happen to nab a counter hit. Forward 3 got an increase to its tracking, although it can still very much be stepped. However, the tracking buff is to her weak side, so that's nice. Back 2 received a similar tracking buff, although to the opposite side. Still somewhat limited in value since it's a high with limited range. Full crouch down forward 4 received a pushback buff and now leaves you closer to your opponent. The difference seems minor, but considering that it's +7 on hit, you'll want to be as close as possible, so we'll take whatever we can get. Now to the couple of big changes. First, switch 1 is now only -1 on block instead of the old -7, which is a pretty significant change. Recall that switch 1 forces crouch, so jab retaliations are not possible. And if they try to do an I-11 move or a crouch jab to check you, you should be able to easily step depending on the character. If they go for something slower to catch your step, then your counter hit tools come into play. This is a big shift in the meta for this move. And finally, a little bit of a game changer. Her new move is 1+4. It's a simultaneous low-high that many have compared to Julia's War Drum, but it's very different in a few important ways. To begin, it's a natural combo always. Instead of having a follow-up attack like War Drum, Josie's instead goes into her switch stance. In other words, she now has an I-15 low that can go into her powerful mix-up stance. That's pretty good, and although the damage is very lackluster, it actually gets better, and here's why. It tracks. Specifically the low, but the high as well to some degree. Remember that Josie's primary weakness is the fact that her tracking is so weak on her normal tools. In order to stop people from stepping, you had to commit to a homing move, which would effectively end your turn if blocked, or you had to play super safe and use tools like down 4. With this new move, you now have a quick neutral tool that tracks to both sides. But there's more. Just like with Julia's War Drum, you can get the low to hit just by itself, which will happen if it hits somebody stepping, since the high has that weak tracking. This is actually a good thing because if the low hits by itself, you get +15, which gives you a free switch 1. So to recap, Josie now has a new super fast low poke that can go into mix-ups, or if you catch just the low, you'll get almost 30 damage. Now, the one thing to be mindful of is that because the stance transition is automatic, if it gets blocked, you're very vulnerable. Although it's important to note that switch 1 can still beat any non-crush move slower than 14 frames, and it will trade with a 14 frame move. This creates a goofy meta because they can just sit there and duck switch 1 to go for a launch, but if they do that, you can do a safer move like switch 2 or crouch dash into while scaling 4. If they stick with a 13 frame move or faster though, there's nothing you can do, and you'll actually be giving them a counter hit if you decide to attack. If your opponent can launch at 13 frames like Kazuya, you're toast no matter what. So it certainly comes with some risk, but because it's so fast and her mids are so chunky, I still think this is a superb move. I'm also convinced that there are Oki setups out there to get the low to hit by itself, although in my limited testing I could not find any, so it is not as good as War Drum in that respect. Will it push her up the tier list? A little, but we'll have to see. Many characters got significant buffs and this move is by no means game breaking, so we'll just have to watch and see how Josie players can make use of it. It certainly addresses a core weakness, so for all you Josie players, I wish you the best of luck and hope that this tool helps. So, to bring this video to a close, I'm going to give you a caveat. We are still in the early stages of discovery for Season 4, so there might be changes not listed in the patch notes that we find out later, or perhaps more uses for tools and changes that we see in the patch notes. Anything significant, and I will certainly do another addendum video. For Josie, you're still going to use her largely the same way as you did before, but now you have an extra tool to add to your arsenal, which should help greatly in stopping steppers, which has been a huge problem for her. The Switch 1 buff will also give you more options to continue your offense. So with that, we've come to the end. I'm going to try to get these out rapid fire so I can begin working on the next full basics guide, so expect these to get uploaded within a couple days of each other. But also don't forget to like and subscribe here on YouTube. I also try to stream whenever I can, so the link to Twitch is down in the video description below. You'll also find Twitter and Facebook links down there as well. Lastly, consideration for the Patreon is greatly appreciated. Patreon is definitely the best way to support your favorite content creators. Of course, big shout outs to our two current patrons, Tato and EDM. That support goes a long way. And thank you guys for checking out this video. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you very shortly for some more Season 4 updates.